Welcome back to part 2 of the key to a 400-pound bench. Like I said in part 1, the key to a 400-pound bench is the same key to a 200-pound bench or a 500-pound bench. Whatever your goal is, this video series is designed to help you optimize and perfect your press. Whether your goal is bodybuilding and you want a bigger chest, or powerlifting and you want a bigger bench, or if you're just training for a sport like football, we're gonna build up your bench to be perfect. All I ask in return for this free information is that you smash that thumbs up button to get this video circulating and shit, and enjoy. So if you did not see part 1 yet, please make sure you go back and see it. I put it in the info box below for you guys. Timestamps are in the info box below, as are these awesome ass shirts, the 400-pound bench club and the 300-pound bench club. Best, most comfiest shirt you'll ever wear in your entire life. They're available on my site, nickwrightbodybuilding.com. That's also in the info box below. So let's dive into the setup today, now that we've covered the fundamentals of arching. When you ask someone the first step of bench press safety and efficiency, what do they say? Hopefully it's to retract the scapula, to retract the shoulders. Everyone knows that, right? Most of us have heard that by now. When you ask someone to do it, typically they'll show you this. They retract the shoulders and then they activate the lats, because those lats are a big part of pressing. Those lats are your foundation. They support your arms at the bottom. They help drive the arms back up. Your lats are a good foundation point for you. That's why a big back is good for a big bench. So everyone gets their shoulders retracted and their lats big and packed. Now, if you notice, I look kind of wide-ish right now. Like there's a taper coming from my waist up to my shoulders in this position. Almost like a relaxed pose in bodybuilding. That's not good for the bench, despite what most people think. See, this isn't horrible because my shoulders are retracted, so it's better than keeping them forward and loose, but it's still not perfect. What happens is we retract our shoulders and then we want to engage those lats too, which is not a bad thing, but we focus too hard on the lats and we end up inadvertently opening up and expanding our lats so we look wide like this, because you can really feel your lats that way. The problem is, in order to expand the lats, you also have to expand your scapula, and we end up opening up our shoulders subtly and slightly that way. They're still not wide open, they're still not loose, but they're not as tight and packed as they could be. After all, we want the humerus to be as far back into that socket as possible for ultimate safety and power. The more forward your shoulders are, the more at risk of injury they are, but also the weaker you're gonna be pressing. You're leaking a lot of power that way. Here's what I do to get into the ultimate position with your scapula and shoulders. This took me up until a 425 bench to really nail this. First, keep your shoulders loose, right? Totally relax them. Then raise your arms up. Shoulders are still super loose. I'm sleepwalking. Now, pretend someone placed a pencil behind your back, right in the middle of your traps, just below your neck. And you have to use your traps to squeeze and hold on to that pencil. You gotta hold that pencil up in midair with your traps. That's what you're doing. Another cue to also remember is why you're squeezing that pencil between your traps. You're taking your delts, your rear delts, your shoulders, the backs of your shoulders, and you're trying to touch them together behind your back. It's impossible physically, but you're trying to do that. So I'm taking my shoulders now, and I'm trying to touch my shoulders together behind my back. I'm taking my traps, and I'm trying to squeeze a pencil between my traps while touching my shoulders behind my back. And now look at the difference in my frame right now. I no longer have that V taper. I no longer look wide and broad up top. I don't look like a bodybuilder doing a relaxed pose anymore. In fact, I look the opposite. I look super narrow now. That's what you want for a bench press. You want those shoulders to be tight like this. Now what about the lats? Well, once you're in this position, you're holding onto the bar, all you're gonna do is cock your elbows in. And that's for anybody, no matter your position. You wanna cock those elbows in, screw them into the ground. And when you do that, you're not bringing everything down here. You're not forcefully lowering your shoulders or arms up or down. They're staying where they are. They're simply back behind you, and you're just cocking the elbows in, flexing the lats as you do so. And now you will feel your lats engaged. They should be super engaged now, but you notice how they're not out wide. I didn't open my lats up and I didn't open my shoulders up. I simply engaged the lats. So they're tensed and they're flexed, but I'm still narrow and I'm still tight. So a good rule of thumb is, when you do this properly, in the mirror, you should basically look like a narrow little latless, shoulderless bitch. You should not look like a broad bodybuilder. The final part of tight shoulders is keeping them tight on the bar. Biggest rule of thumb is put all of your weight onto your traps. Now, of course, your entire back's gonna be making contact with the bench. You're laying on the bench, it makes sense. But you should be focusing on delivering all of your weight onto the traps, not anywhere else, not putting any weight onto the rear delts or onto the upper back as a whole. Squeeze those traps together, squeeze that pencil like we discussed, shoulders are back, and now the weight is on your traps. Whether you're using an arch or not, weight is on your traps. Shoulders are trying to touch each other behind your back still, and then dive into the ground underneath you. So they're coming together, and then they're punching the ground directly behind your back, directly underneath you. You want to picture your arms as being stapled to the bench now. They're no longer stapled to your body. If they're stapled to your body, they're up here. You want them stapled to the bench beneath you. Your body is above your arms. Your arms are a product of the bench now. The bench is your torso. So our shoulders are literally bolted to the bench beneath us, and we're left with these little T-Rex arms. Literally picture a T-Rex. Well, that's all well and good, but how do we apply that when we're actually under the bar moving weight? Because when we're moving weight, let's face it, things feel heavier. It can be a lot harder to put all of this into practice. Let me show you a few tricks. First, I am gonna wrap up. I'm a big fan of wrist wraps, guys, no matter how strong or healthy your wrists are. Believe me, I was benching high 300s forever without ever using wrist wraps. It took me a while to even get used to the feeling of them. My wrists are still healthy as a horse. I can still bench over 400 pounds without anything on my wrists. That's not the point. The point is, I don't want to be 60 years old and have my wrists hurting or riddled with arthritis because of all the wear and tear I put in them now in my younger lifting days. Look at it this way, guys. The wrist is a tiny ass little joint, and it's very mobile. The more mobile a joint is, the easier it is to damage or hurt that joint, especially when it's tiny. These little ass mobile joints are not designed to have hundreds and hundreds of pounds of weight being pressed into them and then moving that weight up and down over and over again every single week, every month, every year. It's a lot of wear and tear these little ass joints weren't designed for. So let's protect them. It's like getting an oil change every X amount of miles, even when your engine's not blowing up yet. You're doing it so it doesn't blow up in the future. Wrist straps help compress the wrist. They take that pressure and they disperse it across the wrist strap and then into your forearm, bypassing the little ass joint. And they do not assist the lift. I don't want to cheat. I want it to be all me. Wrist straps don't help with the lift. In order to assist the lift, you have to compress a joint that moves in a way that leverages the weight you're lifting. So with the bench press, you would have to compress the elbow. If you compress the elbow, you're assisting the extension of that elbow, and therefore you're assisting the lockout of the bench. That can be considered assisting your bench press. Let's be real, guys. How much is a neoprene sleeve gonna actually help your bench press? People overthink this shit like crazy. I personally love the 36-inch long gangster wraps. The length matters, so get 36-inch. The longer it is, the more rotations around the wrist you can get out of it. The more rotations you can get, the more support you have on your wrist. These also have the double Velcro. So the first Velcro strip gets bitten and gripped, and then it comes around and bites the second. And boom, that holds on tight. These are in the info box below with a discount code if you want to try them out. Our first objective when it comes to unracking the bar is to keep those shoulders tight in that position from the very start to the very end of the set. That's hard to do when you have to unrack the bar yourself and don't have a spotter. And even if you do have a spotter helping you get a lift off, it's still hard to keep your shoulders nice and tight when you're starting from back here and you're heaving it up over to here. See, look at the position I'm in. The bar's behind me. It's up over my forehead. It's back here. That's not a good position. That's not a strong position. So to get this bar up on myself, I have to first do a skull crusher, which is draining my triceps, using a lot of energy. And then I have to do a lat pullover to get it over to here. I'm heaving it. That's a lot of motion going on right there, especially when you have heavy ass weight. And two things are gonna happen that work against you. One, you just use a lot of energy doing that, especially when you have heavy weight on the bar. So there goes your energy that could have gone towards some good reps. Two, you just made yourself looser. All that extra movement right there and trying to heave the bar over you is pulling your shoulders and forcing them out of position. And you see it all the time. Once they have the bar over them, a lot of people will scramble to try to get tight again really quick before they begin the reps. But you can never get as tight once the weight is already loaded over you. It's impossible. You have to get tight before you're under the weight and stay there. So what I do to prevent this is I get set up into my position, traps digging into the bench, shoulders are trying to punch into the ground beneath me. My lats are cocked and packed. That's the biggest key here. Glue your triceps to your lats. They don't move. They're stuck there with Gorilla Glue. I'm set up on the bench, and we're gonna go over the setup in the next episode. Don't worry. I just need you to get the shoulder stuff locked into your head first before we get into the bench setup. But I'm set up and I have my grip, which we'll go over as well, without moving my shoulders or upper body. I just lift my hips up towards the bar. I bring my sternum and my abs up towards the bar. And now look at the position I'm in. The bar is no longer behind me. It's right over my chest now. I'm basically in a partial decline press position, which is great. That's gonna be a much stronger position for me to get it off the rack. No more skull crushing. And now to pull the bar over me, I don't have to do a pullover anymore. I don't have to move my arms at all. In fact, look at the angle my torso is making with my arms. It's almost a right angle from my right arm to my chest. And that right angle stays intact. My arms are glued to my lats, they don't move. I simply sit my butt down, and that pulls my entire body down with it. And now the bar is over the center of gravity. And my arms did not move in relation to my torso at all. They stayed in the same exact angle. I turned my torso and arms into a human deadlift jack. It is the same physics a deadlift jack uses to jack up a bar. This is going to allow you to stay super tight and glued in that position, and it's gonna save so much more energy. You're not using your lats or upper body to do a pullover anymore. You're just doing a very partial decline position to unrack it, and then sitting. Now, some people will argue that this method can also cause a lack of tightness and also waste some energy, and that could be a fair argument. Again, like anything, you wanna try it and find out what works for you. I just know personally this has worked for me as well as many other elite lifters I know, and I honestly can't figure out a reason as to why the alternative could ever be any better. Of course, the best alternative is to always make sure you have a spotter giving you a lift off. Once you're under the bar, here's a little test, especially once you have a little bit of weight, just a little bit. You always want to work on technique with light weight, never with heavy weight. When you do a rep, or better yet, when you do a few reps, right? You do 3 reps real quick, and you're done, and you lock it out. Before you rack it, ask yourself, can you, right now, retract your shoulders back anymore? If you can, you messed up. You let your shoulders come forward, you let yourself get a little loose, even if it's only by a little bit. When you started that rep, when you first got set up on the bench, and you asked that same question, there's no way, if you did it right, there's no way you could have pulled your shoulders back anymore. Right now, I cannot physically pull my shoulders back into the bench anymore. They are maximum retracted. They should stay that way all throughout your entire set. So if by the end when you finish, boom, right here, if you can still pull them back at all, you messed up. Right now I can't. But if you finish like this, and then you ask that question and suddenly you can go, oh, that's a problem. You don't want to do that. You see it all the time. Someone benches, they bench, they got to catch their breath. You see them go, retract again, then continue. You see it all the time, or worse yet, someone finishes a rep and they push their shoulders forward at the lockout. That's another very common mistake. People are fighting, grinding, push those shoulders forward. Horrible. They should be retracted at the top of the rep. If that happens, take a second to focus on the techniques we just went over and do a few empty reps, air reps, with nothing in your hands, on the bench. Focus on the feeling of keeping those straps together, of keeping the shoulders bolted onto the bench beneath you, of the little T-Rex arms, not letting the shoulders come forward at all. Focus on how that feels. Get that locked into your head. Another good cue when you're actually under the weight is to, instead of focusing on lowering the bar to your body, make believe the bar stationary and you're doing a horizontal pull-up to that bar. So you are pulling your body up to that bar, you're pulling your chest up to that bar. And you should find that when you're thinking this way, you end up keeping your straps retracted and tight anyway, because that's what you do when you do a pull-up of any sort. Same thing when you lock out. At the top of a lockout, pretend this is the bottom of that same pull-up. Your traps are still nice and retracted as if you're hanging and doing a pull-up upside down. Pull the bar into you. Another cue I like is breaking the bar in half. Pretend you're holding a stick and you're trying to break it down, bending your hands towards your knees and you're breaking it. That's how you're gripping the bar. Again though, the best test is when you get to that lockout with any amount of weight, as long as it's not your max, keep it light, be safe. Ask yourself for a second, can you retract your shoulders again? If you can, continue to work on it. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please smash the thumbs up button. It just helps the algorithm, I've heard. And share it around to whoever you think it might help. Stay tuned for the next one, guys. Appreciate the support.